This video is sponsored by Card Kingdom. If you click on the link in the description below, it'll take you to their store and they'll know I sent you there. Hi everyone, I'm Hone, and it's Friday, so that means it's time for another MTG Top 10. Most of the time, this series looks at the historical performance of cards at Magic's highest level of competition and ranks them based on that data. However, right now it is Strixhaven Limited Review Week on my channel, and as always, one of the week's top 10s ends up being my picks for the biggest bombs in the new limited format. In Magic, bomb refers to a hugely powerful card that drastically alters the game in your favor when you play it. In other words, these are the most powerful cards for Strixhaven Limited, which means you want to see these in your Pack 1 Pick 1 scenarios or in your sealed pool. These cards are, of course, all rare or mythic rare. If you're interested in knowing the best cards in the set that aren't only high rarity, I would recommend my limited set review for Strixhaven, where I give my thoughts on every single card in the set. Anyway, let's get to the list. At number 10, I have a modal double-faced card, the Deans from Witherbloom, which are Valentin, Dean of the Vein, and Lizette, Dean of the Root. There's a lot of modal double-face cards on this list. They printed a lot of really powerful ones in this set where both sides are quite good, and that's true here. Valentin, Dean of the Vein, is a great early drop because he gets in for damage early thanks to Menace, gains you life because of lifelink, and then, in the later part of the game, you can pay extra mana anytime one of your opponent's creatures dies to make a pest token. Lizette is the bombier side here. She's a 4-mana 4/4, and anytime you gain life, you can pay 1 mana. And if you do, you get counters on all your creatures, and they gain trample until end of turn, and that includes her. She's going to be more of a bomb in a wider variety of situations. Black-green has a ton of life gain. That's what the color pair is all about. And it's really not going to be very difficult for Lizette to trigger her ability and pump your whole board permanently while also granting it trample. And for me, that's what really makes this card a bomb, but it isn't downside at all that Valentin is something you can play earlier or in situations where it makes more sense. Like, if you have a pretty much empty board, sometimes playing Valentin might make more sense, especially if you have removal in your hand and things like that. But Lizette is the one that can take over games in a more extreme way. At number 9, I have the blue-green Deans, which are Kian, Dean of Substance, and Imbraham, Dean of Theory. Kian is great because she can exile cards from the top of your library, and if they're lands, you get to draw them, so she basically can draw you cards. She also exiles those cards you hit, though, that aren't lands, and you get a little bit of value out of them because she has the ability to make these fractal tokens for 5 mana. They're usually not going to be huge, but it's a good mana sink, but just like we saw on the other pair of Deans, I think one side of this is the one that really pushes it into bomb territory, and in this case, it's Imbraham, who's already a 4-mana 3/3 flyer, a great stat line for limited. But on top of that, he has an incredibly powerful ability that lets you draw extra cards and get powerful card selection. One really cool thing about him, I think, is that you can pump whatever amount of mana you want to into his ability, and you draw a card from a number of choices. But it's kind of cool that you can exile a bunch on one turn when you have a ton of mana, and then on a later turn, just pay 2 blue to draw one of those cards you exiled. So basically, if you're ahead, he can just be an aggressive creature in the air, and if you're behind, you can just use his ability, and eventually, you're going to end up ahead thanks to it. At number 8, we have another modal double-face card, Rowan, Scholar of Sparks, and Will, Scholar of Frost. Both of them have a powerful static ability for this format, which is decreasing the costs of instants and sorceries. That's great because Magecraft is around, and the more spells you can cast, the more good that's going to be. Rowan has a +1 that lets you damage your opponent, and if you've drawn extra cards, she does even more damage, and she has an emblem that makes it so whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell, you can pay 2 and copy that spell. But again, one side on this I think is the bombier one, and it's Will, Scholar of Frost, that really pushes this into bomb territory. You know, Rowan doesn't really protect herself in any way, and she doesn't really draw you cards in any way either. She's mostly just going to be doing 1 damage and reducing the cost of your spells, which is good. But Will's a lot better, I think. He has that same static ability, but he's got a +1 for you that weakens a creature until your next turn, which means he can protect himself. He has a -3 that you can use right away to draw 2 cards, and he has an ultimate that will normally in the game, turning a bunch of your lands into 4/4s will usually do that for you. So Will can easily take over games while Rowan cannot, but again, it's all upside to have another card on the other side of these cards that would already kind of be bombs on their own. At number 7, we move away from modal double-face cards to Sedge Witch, who is an incredibly efficient creature as a 3-mana 3/2 with Menace and a ward that your opponent has to pay 3 life for. That alone wouldn't be a bomb, though. What makes her a bomb is her incredible Magecraft trigger, which gives you a pest token every time you cast or copy an instant or sorcery. So she comes down early, can attack well, is difficult for your opponent to ever come out ahead against because of ward, And then if they don't kill her in a turn or two, she's going to start making pest tokens that really populate the board. She's going to give you a ton of value very quickly. At number 6, we have an Elder Dragon, Tanas Ear Quandrix. So Tanas Ear has great stats to begin with, as a 5-mana 4/4 flying and trample, has a good enter the battlefield ability that doubles the number of +1/+1 counters on one creature you control, and that will come up especially because of fractal tokens, which blue-green has a lot of. You'll be able to double the power of fractal tokens, you'll be able to double the power and toughness, obviously, of things other than fractal tokens if they have counters as well. There will be some times where that ability doesn't do anything, but I think it will be pretty common for it to do something. But even if it doesn't, he has another powerful attack trigger, which in this case changes the base power and toughness of your whole board to whatever Tanas Ear Quandrix's power and toughness are. That is almost certainly going to upgrade your entire board. You know, there might be one or two things that gets weakened, but you'll upgrade enough things that it doesn't matter. It also means Tanas Ear himself is good to put +1/+1 counters on, because he'll give a bigger boost to the whole board. So yeah, attacks really high in the air, has 2 evasive abilities, doubles +1/+1 counters on one thing, and then also, when it attacks, upgrades your entire board. Sounds like a bomb to me. At number 5, I've included 2 cards, but that's because they're pretty similar cards, and they're both from the Mystical Archive, which is a special subset of cards that will appear in Strixhaven boosters. You'll get 1 card from the Archive in every single pack. And both of these are incredibly powerful board sweepers. Generally, Day of Judgment's going to be the better one because it costs 1 less mana. However, if you have a Elder Dragon, Crux of Fate might get really silly because, you know, you could blow up your opponent's whole board and yours, but hold on to your Elder Dragon, which will pretty much definitely win you the game. But in short, both of these completely reshape the board. There isn't really any sort of effect that's similar in Magic as a board sweeper, and there aren't very many of them in limited formats, so when you do have them, you should basically always play them. They can be a little awkward sometimes if you're the aggro deck, but even then, you can sort of plan for it or, you know, not use it if it's not going to work out for you. If you're not using it, it probably means you're ahead of your opponent and you don't need to, but as soon as you fall behind, you can use it, and that will fix things. Board sweepers are great and limited, and that's true of these 2 cards. At number 4, we return to modal double-face cards, this time with Mila, Crafty Companion, and Luca, Wayward Bonder. Mila is quite good. Her Planeswalker ability won't really come up, but the other ability will. Basically makes it so your opponent can never efficiently kill your creatures because you're always going to draw a card off of it, and that's really strong. She doesn't have great stats, though. She wouldn't be a bomb on her own. Luca is really what pushes us there. He's got a +1 that lets you draw a bunch of cards, and a -2 that can be either aggressive, you can use it to really go after your opponent with a creature you reanimate, or you can use it more defensively. You can reanimate a creature to protect Luca. That creature won't stick around, but it is nice that it has that kind of effect. And then he has an ultimate that'll win you the game in a few turns, and he starts at 5 loyalty, so getting there isn't crazy. So, you know, the big downside about Luca is that it costs 6 mana, sometimes you won't get there, and the good news is when that happens, assuming you're red-white anyway, you can play Mila, who will be quite good too. Luca is definitely the side that will take over games and feel like a bomb, but having Mila on the other side is pretty big upside. At number 3, I have Professor Onyx. This new Liliana does not disappoint. She has an incredibly powerful Magecraft ability that drains your opponent for 2 life. That's the kind of thing that it's very, very difficult to race against. She's got a +1 that draws you cards and loads your graveyard. She's got a -3 that's a removal spell. And her ultimate might not always win you the game. It can be a little inconsistent depending on what your opponent's hand looks like, but it will virtually always set you up to win the game in a few turns, even if it doesn't win you the game right away. Anytime you have a Planeswalker that can draw you cards and be a removal spell, you're usually looking at a bomb, and that's what I think we have here. Plus you add this powerful static Magecraft ability, and things look really awesome here. At number 2, it's another Elder Dragon, Velomacus Lorehold. He might cost 7 mana, but he gives you 7 mana's worth of value for sure. He's a 5/5 with flying, vigilance, and haste. That's already pretty nice things to have. Probably wouldn't be enough to make him a bomb on its own, though. What really makes him a bomb is that when he attacks, you get to look at the top 7 cards of your library and cast an instant or sorcery spell from among them for free. It doesn't have to have a casting cost less than or equal to his power, but he's a 5/5. That'll be most of your stuff. And you're going to hit something when you look at the top 7 in this format. You're going to have a lot of instants and sorceries, so it'll just happen. It's not something you really have to build around. And what's really great is because it combines with haste, it means almost always you'll be able to play Velomacus, attack, and then get a spell for free. And that means even if your opponent kills Velomacus when they untap, they're usually going to be in such bad shape that it doesn't really matter. And then if they don't kill him, then they're 100% dead the next time you attack. At number 1, it's Hoffrey Ghostforge. Hoffrey is a spirit lord, pumping them all and giving them trample and haste, which is great. Red-white has a ton of spirits. It has spirit tokens, but it also has a lot of cards that just are spirits, real cards, not just tokens. And, so that already makes Hoffrey pretty good, because usually he's going to come down and immediately impact your whole board, because it's going to pump one or two things in a lot of situations, and that will suddenly make a difference. But then, what really pushes us over into silly #1 bomb in the format territory is its other ability, which makes it so that anytime one of your non-token creatures dies, you exile it, and you get a copy of that's a spirit into play. So, you get a copy of whatever dies as a spirit, which means it's going to get that upgrade of +1/+1 and have trample and haste. And one really cool thing here too, it's not really something that was necessary to add to the card, but they decided to make it so that those cards don't stay exiled forever. Because when the token dies, you get the creature back in your graveyard, so you don't even really have a downside of losing access to that card. But yeah, Hoffrey will completely warp games every time he comes down. He's even good on defense, because obviously if you can block and just keep getting copies of your creatures, that's going to be a problem for your opponent too. So he's good if you're behind, he's good if you're at parity, and he's good if you're ahead. He's going to get you to the win in basically all of those situations if he's left unchecked. Well, those are my picks for the biggest bombs in Strixhaven Limited. If you want to own any of these cards, you can pre-order them right now at Card Kingdom. You'll find direct links to the Card Kingdom store for each of them in the description. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like it and share it so that others can enjoy it too. If you want to make sure you catch future MTG Top 10s, don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications. And if you're interested in seeing my full set review for Strixhaven or other MTG Top 10s, you should see a playlist for both of those on your screen shortly. Thanks for watching.